Okay, farting around with this clamping and gluing and moving and clamping again was just a pain in my butt. So let's change that right now. Hey guys, rainy day in the shop. Been making some fly boxes, but I'm actually starting to make more. I want, instead of one every once in a while, I'm struggling for the amount of time it takes to glue up one frame. So I'm gonna make an adjustable picture frame jig out of some checker plate. It goes to about that big, so I can make a whole bunch of different sizes. Put them all in at once, miter cut, tighten it down, glue the whole thing all at once. Make it faster, so I'm not constantly having to, I think there's 3 or 4 glue ups per side. So that's like 5 days. Takes too long. So anyway, so I can speed stuff up, let's make this jig. Hey, I just cleaned off the edge of this piece of checkerboard that I have, and then I put 2 1/4 inch on my speed square, and I just marked this and then used my chop saw, which, by the way, you can use your chop saw blade, regular blade, for aluminum, so that's awesome. Anyway, I cut the strips, making them all the same using the speed square, and once they were all done, then I would clean the edges up. Now that I have all the pieces cut, I'm just going to clean up all the edges so there's nothing on there that can cut my fingers while I'm working with it, and just to make it a little more pleasing. I think I will round these edges a little bit too because the points were just a little bit sharp, so I'll just speed through here real quick. And this isn't me in real time, by the way. I'm kidding, I know you know this. But anyway, just round these corners off, make it a little more easy to work with. Okay, now I'm on the drill press. I want to get these holes accurate and the same on all 4 pieces of this checker plate. So I put a bolt into a board and I recessed it using a Forstner bit. And now every time I drill a hole, I just move it over onto the bolt, drill another hole. I also screwed in a piece of backboard plywood just to give me like a fence to keep it square as I'm going along so that I could keep drilling the dead center. And then I just kept moving down until I was able to get all these holes. Here's a closer look for you. Move it over onto the bolt. Just hold it down. Quick drill. And boom. Now, all 4 of these turned out absolutely identical. It took a few seconds just to, well, I shouldn't say a few seconds, about a minute and a half to build this jig. I'm lying. I guess it took 7 minutes. But anyway, it took less time to build the jig than it would have been to measure all those holes and then to set them and then make sure that they were all drilled exactly perfectly. So just taking a few minutes to build this jig was worth everything in the end because they were exactly the same. If this is a jig to help me make a jig, is a Poro jiggy? Am I getting jiggy with it? Set my speed square up here to, my combination square up to just over 1/2 inch, and I'm going to mark inside of each one of these connecting pieces. And these 2 pieces of aluminum are going to be the connectors that connect the 2 strips that I just made with all the holes in it. They're the arms of the actual jig itself. So these are the 2 connector pieces. So I just want to make sure that I get those holes marked and drilled out and ready to go. I'm using a 1/4 inch drill bit here, and the bolts that I'll be using are also 1/4 inch, so they fit just perfectly. And I think just about all the holes that I used were 1/4 inch for this, including the holes in the arms. Okay, I'm going to use a 3/8 measurement here to put the bolt hole to connect the armature to these arms here so that they're all the same. I just put it on my combination square, and that way I can set it up each time and drill out all 4 of these. Okay, so I'm going to stick a 1/4 inch nut and bolt through the armature into the arms each at the holes I just drilled. And I'm just going to put a double nut on each one just to keep it. So once I get it set to a certain position, I will double nut it so that it can't come undone, but still gives me a little bit of movement so that I can open and close them for different sizes. And I'll just go ahead and do this on both of them. And once that's done, we will just do a quick test here. Okay, here I am just tightening that down. I have my Phillips screwdriver and my 3/8 open end wrench, and I can get that as tight as I can, and there we go. So now they're nice and tight, they won't come undone, and they still have movement, which is perfect. Okay, so I got a 1/4 inch self-tapping drill screw here, and I am just adding a small piece of U-channel, aluminum U-channel to the bottom, so it gives me something that I can grab together with the clamps so that I can pull them together. Otherwise there's nothing really, no purchase for the clamps to grab onto. So I did put these here, but you'll see in a few minutes that I actually had to change this, and I'll explain why when I get there. Okay, and the way I had this set up, I'm going to have to cut a few pieces of the U-channel to put as legs on the other side so that when I'm setting this up, the whole thing will be level. Otherwise, if it sags off, the miters won't connect perfectly. So I'm just going to cut these and attach them to each end of the leg. Now just a quick cleanup here on these U-channels just to make sure there's no sharp edges because they are pretty sharp. My 3-inch hole saw, I gotta get 4 of these cut, so I'm just gonna zip these out of a 3/4 inch piece of plywood, and we will carry on right after this. Okay, so we have our 3-inch holes, and what I've done is I put my speed square just over the hole and marked a 90-degree Pac-Man. So we're gonna make a little Pac-Man here. I put my thicker blade on my bandsaw because it's important to make sure these are actually 90 degrees. If they're not 90 degrees, then the miters won't come together perfectly. So you take your time on this one and make sure you get a nice even 90-degree cut. Okay, there's my 4 Pac-Man. I thought it'd be funny. I was gonna set this up and do a little bing 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 bing, but it didn't work. So anyway, haha. So I put one of the wedges in on a board, a sacrificial piece, so that when I'm drilling these holes, because I need a place for the peg or the screw to put in that'll sit into the holes in the arms, so that it was easily repeatable and accurate. So I just screwed that wedge in, and it worked awesome. I'm not sure what happened to the footage of me putting the bolts into the Pac-Man. So I just put my 3/8 in there, and I connected them with a washer on the back side just so that they were nice and snug against the checker plate. And then I cut 4 6-inch pieces of cedar just as a little test because I had a spare piece there. And so I just dropped those into this frame, and now I'm just going to squeeze together on the 2 pieces that I had screwed in there so that I could have purchase with my clamp. And while you're squeezing, you got to do a little bit of tweaking just to make sure one's not going past the other, and then just give it a decent crank. You don't even have to crank it very hard, and it squares off. And I'm just going to check it here with my square. This is a very old square, and it's probably one of my best squares. Some of the new squares I got aren't even perfect, which is amazing. So stick with your old tools. So here's a flyover look, and that's it. Quick single clamp, one tiny clamp, and that's all I need, and she's squared off, ready to glue. Awesome. Super simple project. I thank you guys for hanging along. It was a little longer than normal, but we'll keep it under 10 minutes. Anyway, you can use this for all kinds of shapes and sizes, and thanks very much for hanging out. If you found any value in this, please consider subscribing to my channel. It helps out a lot, and make some comments, and for sure give me a thumbs up. Thanks for tuning in.